Growing up, girlhood was a song sung proudly. I'd run around the house in pink, ruffled dresses, imagining that my issues would be as silly as the ones in the books I'd read. Maybe I'd catch a case of the stripes and my skin would turn rainbow, or I'd find a tiger in my bathtub who fancied a cup of tea. As I've grown, I've realized that my issues are much more complex, and being a girl means much more than I thought. Being a girl and girlhood is a theme that needs to be romanticized as often as it's lived, for sometimes the rose-colored glasses are the only reason it's endured. Today, I will be sharing with you excerpts from the novels Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery, a story about an imaginative orphan named Anne, and A Tale of Four Sisters entitled Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. These stories encapsulate the pain, ideas, and tears that beauty and girlhood creates. This first excerpt is from Anne of Green Gables. In this part of the book, Anne has just been told about a possible new friend named Diana. Oh, I'm so glad she's pretty, next to being beautiful oneself, and, well, that's impossible in my case. It would be the best to have a beautiful bosom friend. When I lived with Mrs. Thomas, she had a bookcase in her sitting room with glass doors. There weren't any books in it. Mrs. Thomas kept her best china and preserves there, when she had any preserves to keep, that is. One of the doors was broken. Mr. Thomas smashed it one night when he was slightly intoxicated, but the other was whole, and in it I used to pretend there was another girl who lived. I called her Katie Maurice, and we were very intimate. I used to talk to her by the hour, especially on Sunday, and tell her everything. Katie was the comfort and consolation of my life. We used to pretend that the bookcase was magical and enchanted, and if I only knew the spell, I could open the door and step right into the world where Katie Maurice lived, instead of into Mrs. Thomas's shelves of china. And then Katie Maurice would have taken me by the hand and taken me to a wonderful place, all sunshine and fairies and beauty. And we would have lived there for happily ever after. When I went to live with Mrs. Hammond, it just broke my heart to leave Katie Maurice, and she felt dreadfully too. I know she did, for she was crying when she kissed me goodbye through the bookcase door. There was no bookcase at Mrs. Hammond's, but just up the river, a little way from the house, there was a long green valley, and the loveliest echo lived there. It echoed back every word you said, even if you didn't say it a bit loud. So I imagined that it was a little girl called Violetta, and we were great friends, and I loved her almost as well as I loved Katie Maurice. Not quite, but almost, you know? The night before I went to the asylum, I said goodbye to Violetta, and oh, her goodbye came back to me in such sad tones. I'd become so attached to her that I hadn't the heart to imagine a bosom friend at the asylum, even if there had been a scope for the imagination there. In this next excerpt, we explore the life of Beth March, the quiet middle child in a family filled with lively women. Beth's experiences in the Little Women demonstrate how traditional ways of living are often not the ones most enjoyed by girls growing up in conventional societies. Beth was too bashful to go to school. It had been tried, but she suffered so much that it was given up, and she did her lessons at home with her father, even when he went away and her mother was called to devote her skill and energy to soldiers' aid societies. Beth went faithfully on by herself and did the best she could. She was a housewifely little creature. Helped Hannah keep home neat and comfortable for the workers, never thinking of any reward but to be loved. Long, quiet days she spent, not lonely nor idle, for her world was peopled with imaginary friends. And she was by nature a busy bee. There were 6 dolls to be taken care of and dressed up every morning, for Beth was still a child and loved her pets as well as ever. Not one whole or handsome among them. All were outcasts until Beth took them in, for when her sisters outgrew these idols, they passed them to her because her sister Amy would have nothing old or ugly. Beth cherished them all the more tenderly for that very reason. No pins were ever stuck into their cotton vials at the hospital for infirm dolls she set up. No harsh words or blows were ever given them. No neglect ever saddened the heart of the most repulsive. But all were fed and clothed and caressed with affection which never failed. Returning back to the story of Anne, this next excerpt explores how imagination and hope are what keep the story of girlhood flowing. My name is the Lady Cordelia Fitzgerald. No, it isn't. I can't make that seem real. She danced up to the little looking glass and peered into it. Her pointed, freckled face and solemn gray eyes peered back at her. You're only Anne of Green Gables, and I see you, just as you are looking now, whenever I try to imagine I'm the Lady Cordelia. Oh, but it's a million times nicer to be Anne of Green Gables than Anne of Nowhere in particular, isn't it? She bent forward, kissed her reflection affectionately, and then betook herself to open up the window. Dear Snow Queen, good afternoon, and good afternoon, dear birches down in the hollow, and good afternoon, dear gray house up on the hill. I wonder if Diana is to be my bosom friend. I hope she will, and I shall love her very much. But I must never forget Katie Maurice and Violetta. I must be careful to them and send them a kiss every day. Anne blew a couple of airy kisses from her fingertips past the cherry blossoms, and then, with her chin in her hand, she drifted luxuriously out onto a sea of dreams. The final excerpt is again touching on the subject of Beth, this time highlighting her struggles and how pain and longing are unavoidable. Beth had her troubles as well as others, not being an angel but a very human little girl. She often wept a little weep, as her sister Jo said, because she couldn't take music lessons and have a fine piano. She loved music so much, tried so hard to learn, and practiced away so patiently the jingling old instrument that it did seem as if someone ought to help her. Nobody did, however, and nobody saw Beth wipe the tears off the yellow keys that wouldn't keep in tune when she was alone. She sang like a lark about her work, never was too tired for Marmee and the girls, and day after day she said hopefully to herself, I know I'll get my music in sometime, if I'm good. There are many Beths in the world, shy and quiet, sitting till the little cricket on the hearth stops chirping and the sweet, sunshiny presence vanishes, leaving silence and shadow behind. Thank you.